Hey, looks like the Chicago Bears have a difficult decision to make. The Bears this year, this offseason, they've got some things in their favor: spending power, draft capital, but a rare opportunity just fell into their lap, and I want to talk about it. And the thing is with this, do the Bears have the discipline necessary to hold off on the something shiny players in favor of what the team truly needs? Are they able to stick to a plan? And this is what provoked this. And I'm going to talk about Myles Garrett. It's everywhere. Myles Garrett just requested a trade from the Cleveland Browns. Guys, a player like him, right? A reigning defensive player of the year. That kind of player just never becomes available, right? Is this a no-brainer? Is this a dare to be great situation for the Bears? And I want to hear from you in the comments. Is this a move that the Bears need to make? Is this a move that they should make? And this is Sports Talk Bears. I'm Sean. Hey, if you get a chance, it'd be a huge blessing if you hit the subscribe button. Would love to have you join this fast-growing community, and I'm just going to get to it. Let's just look at the numbers for Garrett, and this is just ridiculous, and yes, it's shiny. Since 2022, the guy has a 95.1 PFF grade. That's just sick. That's number one in the league. 44 sacks. Once again, number one. And a 24.4% pass rush win rate. And that's first as well. You're looking at a career that he has 352 total tackles, 102.5 sacks, and 20 forced fumbles. Hall of Fame worthy numbers. All these were courtesy of PFF. And the Bears front office, they've been signaling their cheap ways are a thing of the past. Most recently, paying new head coach Ben Johnson $13 million a year. And that puts him in the top 5 highest paid coaches. Guys, with Myles Garrett, this is a generational proven player in the prime of a Hall of Fame career, 102 sacks over 8 seasons. This guy gets 10 sacks every single year. This feels like a dream. So should Ryan Poles even consider it? Well, this is likely why he wouldn't pull the trigger. There's also a matter of offensive line to address. I mean, I mention this because the dilemma is real, and the Bears have been here before, right? Do we continue to ignore the offensive line with a quarterback that just got sacked 68 times? And the Bears are also looking at offensive guard Trey Smith. He's most likely going to be available via free agency. And there is a scenario that Poles gets aggressive. He signs both of these guys. Maybe that makes Garrett a more palatable pursuit. I don't know. Let's just look at the price. There's going to be multiple teams bidding on this guy, and the final asking price might be multiple firsts. So we'd be looking at, and I'm not going to waste time with a bunch of complicated trade scenarios, right? A first and a second. Let's say that's likely the minimum that gets it done. If we look at it in free agency, I think we definitely need to add a center, and we definitely need to add a guard in free agency. This is 100% minimum of what I think needs to be done for Caleb Williams. We need to make 2 aggressive swings in free agency to fix this line in a way that we're confident that it's fixed. That new offensive line coach, Dan Ruchar, has what he needs to work with. If we're looking at the Garrett deal, if doing the Garrett deal makes this no longer possible, I've got zero interest, and I'm going to go to Bleacher Nation here. I've got absolutely zero interest if we can't make 3 big swings. So what also makes this unlikely? It's not just a draft capital loss. It's the positional imbalance that this creates. And if you've been following the Chicago Bears for a while, most notably the tendencies of GM Ryan Poles and what he has said in the past, he has stated over and over that the money that he allocates positionally across this roster, it has to be evened out in a way that makes sense. And he's really hesitant to push the balance sheet on one spot of the field too high. And we're looking at the Bears already having a 4-year, $125 million contract with Montez Sweat. That means at the end position, the Bears are already committing to Garrett's 5-year, $125 million deal on top of that if this deal is done. We're looking at the cap hit for Sweat this year. It's a huge $25 million. That's 9.12% of the Bears cap, and that's via Spot Track. Adding Myles Garrett, that would incur another 19.7 this year alone. That makes a $45 million commitment to the defensive end position alone. That's almost 20% of the Bears cap space. This reality, this reality is something that makes this trade a really difficult thing for me to advocate for. And GM Ryan Poles, he's faced with a really once in a career availability in Garrett. I get that. He should do his due diligence. I get that. But man, this is an absolute crazy ask for him, I think. And the cap numbers that are being thrown around can be deceiving as well. Windy City Gridiron, they pointed this out by placing the Bears as having 50 million in effective cap space. That's different than total cap space. And this is before any players are even cut. So this is like solid. But let's say cuts conservatively bring that up to 60 million. This really gives the Bears the ability to make one, maybe two big swings via free agency. I don't think it gives us the ability to do three. And guys, once again, we desperately need a center. We desperately need a guard in free agency. I think the ideal scenario would be Trey Smith at guard, Drew Dahlman at center. Then we need the rest of the cap to fill the roster. Then there's a matter of the draft. That's really how we should be building this team, not through free agency. If Garrett can be had for a first and second, which to me, that feels like a bargain, we'd still have a second to get a premium player still. Still maybe get a guy like Tyler Booker out of Alabama, just really good offensive tackle, offensive guard. I think he'd fit most as a guard. He very well might be the best target in 2025. And at the 39th pick, he might be there. And here's what PFF had to say about Booker to the Bears. And I really like this player. This might be my favorite target on the offensive line in this draft season. And I quote, the Bears probably wouldn't want to spend a top 10 selection as a guard, but Booker could be available in the second round when they come on the clock. The Alabama guard, he has excelled in pass protection throughout his college career and has allowed just 10 pressures from 395 pass blocking snaps in 2024. And if you look at Booker a little more, a 2-year starter at left guard, just an immense, huge guy, 6'5", 325 pounds, really low center of gravity. And that allows him to really maximize his power. He has the ability to knock defenders out of the equation. He's just a really good blocker. The only knock on him, he needs to work on his lateral quickness a little bit, his ability to climb up to the second level. But this guy has all the makings of an all-pro guard, and he might actually be the safest offensive line prospect in this entire draft, in my opinion. So if you think you can have an eye candy scenario on either side of the ball, I don't think you can have both, but let's look at the best situation on each side of the ball on paper. The matter of fit with Myles Garrett, it's a no-brainer defensively. Imagine this, a defensive line of Montez Sweat and Garrett, up-and-coming three-tech Gervon Dexter, our bulldozer at nose, Andrew Billings. I don't have to sell how great that would be. Wow, right? But in the same breath, let's look at a reimagined offensive line. Darnell Wright and Braxton Jones at tackle, Drew Dahlman at center, Trey Smith, and kind of fill in the blank at guard. I mean, that could be drafting Kelvin Banks. That could be drafting LSU's Will Campbell. But what I really like, and what I like about this, making a plan of drafting Booker in the second, making these free agent moves on the offensive line in Dahlman and Trey Smith. And with that, there's also a situation that we signed Tevin Jenkins on a really team-friendly deal. He's expressing in the media that he wants to stay with the Bears. Maybe we can facilitate that with a cheap deal. Then we could allow someone like Booker, or even a first-round guard. We could allow whoever the player is to develop a little bit behind him and be able to plug in when and if, but probably when he misses time. I'm talking about Jenkins. We could be in a situation that we still have our picks totally intact. A first rounder, number 10, have the freedom to take the best player on the board at that point because we have shored up the offensive line already in free agency. Then we could still have a second pick beyond the one spent on Booker to do the same thing as well. Tons of flexibility when drafting. We can trade up or down and still end up with possibly 3 blue chip players to build our team with. Those round 2 picks are early ones too. Remember that. Plus, we get to have a healthy cap situation in the future to sustain this team build. I personally like that scenario better. I think there's a forgotten player as well. We also we also would have a Karan Amagaje who didn't even have an offseason last year, is still a really nice player. Get this guy underneath a great line coach, a creative play caller in Ben Johnson, give him a full offseason. He could be the heir apparent at left tackle behind Braxton. He really intrigues me. Although his time playing last year, I'll be honest, it was not impressive, but that could be completely different with a full off season under actual competent coaching. So let's kind of sum this up. The case for and against the Bears trading for Myles Garrett. Let's look at the pros. There's a strong argument, right? Myles Garrett, the most dominant pass rusher of his generation, of the decade. He entered the NFL and he's been selected to 6 Pro Bowls, 4 first-team All-Pro honors, was named the 2023 Defensive Player of the Year. Career numbers: 352 total tackles, 102.5 sacks, 20 forced fumbles. He is a plug-in Hall of Fame worthy player. Every team in the league, though, every team would love to have a player of Garrett's caliber. Former number 1 overall pick. He hasn't really found sustained success playing for Cleveland. They're not a good team. They're in the middle of a rebuild right now. There's no doubt he can, just by entering onto a defensive line, he could transform a whole defense. So there's so many good things about him, and pairing him opposite Montez Sweat with the other players that we have, it's tantalizing. But then there's cons. Older side of 29. Really hard to evaluate the long-term future if the Bears decide to trade for Myles Garrett. Diana Rossini mentioned that one GM had this to say about what a trade for Garrett could look like. And this is about the cost. Probably a 1+. Can't wait for it'll be 3 1s crowd. Not happening. 1 and a 2, 1 and 2 3s. Throw a player in there. The Bears can't afford it, but it's really hard to predict a trade package right now. He's still in the prime of his career, but if you factor in his age, his salary, the draft capital that's going to take to get him, I think it's too much for the Bears to do. I don't think it's wise. But one thing is certain, and we know this, he's not going to come cheap. There's going to be competition. Even ESPN NFL draft analyst Matt Miller, he suggested that the Bears should offer picks number 10, number 39, and 41 in exchange for him. But we're a team that's focused on building around Caleb Williams. That's too steep of a price. It'd be great to add another elite pass rusher, but how about we keep our picks? Maybe we draft an elite edge rusher with our number 1 pick if we make the right moves in free agency, if we shore up the offensive line before the draft, and we're free to pick just the best player on the board. I mean, it's possible, but I think our priority should first be reinforcing the offensive line. I think the thought of Myles Garrett is just us getting distracted with something shiny player. So I think for the Bears, it comes down to whether the price is right. Trading significant draft assets, I think it really hinders our ability to build a balanced, competitive roster for the long term. I think it really hurts our salary cap situation in the future with $45 million on 2 defensive ends. I think it's crazy. It's a nice luxury to have, but I think it is just that, a luxury. The Bears learned a really tough lesson after trading for Khalil Mack in 2018. I mean, the move brought lots of excitement, if you remember, but the lack of draft capital from that, the salary cap flexibility lost, it really prevented the Bears, partially, bad decisions were part of that too, but it really prevented the Bears from fixing offensive line issues and really fixing offensive issues. Ryan Poles already traded a 2nd rounder for Montez Sweat, signed a massive extension shortly right after. I think it's best for the Bears to stay out of this one. But you guys let me know in the comments, what do you think about potentially pursuing Myles Garrett for that price, like a 1st rounder and a 2nd rounder, plus taking on that cap space? You guys let me know, and I always appreciate your comments. We will talk soon. Enjoy your day, and bear down.